Hello, good morning and welcome to New Dawn. It is 6 a.m. in Nairobi, Kenya on this Wednesday, the 5th of June, 2024. My name is Michelle Ngele Odhiambo. We're glad you could join us this morning as we take a look at the latest news making headlines today. We'd like to hear where you're watching us from. Do speak to us on X at K24 Tv. The hashtag is New Dawn. Also, a quick look at us making headlines on the dailies on this 5th day of June. A quick look at the People Daily there says how varsity student loans will be shared. We'll be looking at some of those top stories on the dailies. And the state has now revised the mode in which money for higher education will be administered, with learners from low-income families set to be beneficiaries. And this headline comes in the midst of concerns from students and student leaders who say the new university funding model is disenfranchising students across the country. Many of them have now had to defer semesters as a result of accumulating bills. A look at the front page of the Standard newspaper there says poor performers in civil service to be sent packing. All right. So these are new guidelines of running state agencies, providing for rewards and sanctions against board members, CEOs, as well as employees on performance. Bosses below par will be sent packing in 1 year, and employees after 3 years. We'll be taking a look at that as well as we take a look at us making headlines. We analyze the dailies later on. At the top there, the Standard says radio presenter Jambi Koikai dies after illness. And of course, we send out our condolences to family and friends of Jambi, who was a strong champion of, among others, the fight against endometriosis. We're taking a look at that and many more headlines. Well, let's take a look at us making headlines in the stories this morning. Now, the country could soon become a cash economy, driving banks and mobile money out of business if the proposed 16% VAT on financial transactions in the finance bill is implemented. The Kenyan Bankers Association, appearing before the Finance and Planning Committee of the National Assembly during the public participation process, warned that the 16% tax could also drive investors out of the country. Brian Amoy reports that the unpredictability of Kenya's tax environment has raised concerns among businesses who decry the lack of an effective tax regime.
Day 7 of the Finance Bill 2024 public participation saw various stakeholders, including the Kenya Bankers Association, Haki Yetu and Okoa Uchumi, present their views. They argue that the Finance Bill 2024 is detrimental to the economy. The bankers contend that the proposed 16% VAT on financial transactions will drive investors away from the country.
Even at that level where we are paying matatu fees and I'm transacting on my mobile phone, I'm transacting from my bank to the till in the matatu, again, this move from 15 to 40 still applies. And we've done our research because as chairman, you said Edna is here. We have a very powerful team from Equity, ABSA. We've done our research and we've not found anywhere in the world where there's this application of both VAT and excise duty on financial services.
The idea is not it's not the value of the transaction. It would be the fees charged if there are fees charged. And in the absence of it, then your concern about foreign exchange then should rest.
The Association of Startups and MSMEs stated that many businesses have closed due to harsh taxes, proposing a re-evaluation of the tax measures. They argued that the unpredictability of Kenyan tax policies could harm the economy further.
What we're just proposing is that we have a progressive manner in how we introduce the taxes. If you look at the national tax policy that's supposed to be 5 years, what we're seeing currently in Kenya is that it keeps changing within the year, right? So we have submissions for the finance bill, we pass the Finance Act, and then new taxes start being introduced within the year. It makes it very difficult for SME startups and even for corporations, I'm sure even for KPMG as well, planning on how to have a kitty for regulation and compliance, because that is mandatory.
The government is eager to raise taxes to support itself, but people already burdened by the high cost of living say any additional tax will do more harm than good, as they take to the streets to protest the move. As the finance bill faces opposition from various sectors, whether the public views will be incorporated in the final report remains to be seen as the budget-making process for the year draws to a close. Brian Amuai, K24, Nairobi.
Meanwhile, the Alcoholic and Beverage Association of Kenya has warned that illicit alcohol could dominate up to 70% of the alcoholic drinks market in Kenya if Treasury proceeds with its plan to increase the excise tax on spirits by up to 79.9%. ABAC Chair Eric Githua says the proposals in the Finance Bill 2024 will significantly impact prices, nearly doubling them and pushing products out of reach for the majority, hence driving consumers to cheaper alternatives. Here's Busara Naman with that report.
Finance Bill 2024 continues to draw mixed reactions from manufacturers and sector players who have warned that the tax increments will lead to local production decline, which will in turn result to job losses and have a negative effect on the GDP.
Government needs to be more considerate. We think they can take, we're not saying they cannot take excise on spirits, but it should be gradual because that's the only way you can allow the industry to grow. We believe that this should not be the detriment of loyal taxpayers who go out of their way to support millions of livelihood through their various investments.
ABAC Chairperson Eric Githua and EABL Corporate Relations Director Eric Kineti criticized the government's proposal to raise the excise tax on spirits to 79% as outlined in the 2024 Finance Bill.
And now what we are saying is that if we were to increase with the proposed rates that are in the Finance Bill of 2024, this situation on spirits will become even worse. And the government will have a big headache in terms of controlling illicit products that will come from outside the country and even manufactured illegally within Kenya.
Githua says currently 59% of hard liquor is illicit. If the bill passes as it is, illicit alcohol could dominate up to 70% of the market.
This represents a 80% price increase in the cost of spirituous beverages, such that the cost of the cheapest spirit will move from 290 shillings to a recommended price of Kenya shillings 770 shillings. A price that we strongly believe that most people cannot, especially our value consumers, cannot be able to afford, which unfortunately will lead to illicit.
This means that out of every 10 bottles of whiskey or hard liquor sold in Kenya, 7 could be illicit and counterfeit, produced outside the regulated processes of legitimate manufacturers. As the public participation for the 2024-2025 Finance Bill continues, the manufacturers are calling upon the Finance Parliamentary Committee, chaired by Kimani Kuria, to put their proposals and concerns into consideration to avoid disrupting the sector.
We call upon the National Assembly to fully reconsider some of the proposals contained in the Finance Bill 2024. While we appreciate the need by the national government to raise revenue to finance its development projects, we believe that this should not be the detriment of loyal taxpayers who go out of their way to support millions of livelihood through their various investments.
Busara Naman, K24 TV.
Let's focus on education now. And the National Assembly Committee on Education has instructed the State Department of Higher Learning to revoke September intake admission letters and instead issue letters with an exact fee structure per student. This is after the MPs cast doubt on the effectiveness of the means testing instruments used to determine the level of funding per student. And as Harriet Chimia reports, over 9,000 students filed an appeal over unfairness in the band placement of funding.
To ask this, Madam PS, you'll be notified.
Presenting the submissions before the National Assembly Education Committee, the State Department of Higher Learning revealed that as of January 1st this year, 9,726 university students have filed appeals citing unfair placement in funding levels under the new funding model.
We have asked that that particular fee structure, you need to come out before this committee having made a decision on how you will give us a proper fee structure and how you are recalling the other one. So that don't come next week telling us about how you want to do it. Come us with the solution so that when you'll be working on the placement, the mean testing, the loans and the funding equals to the household fees. And that is what we want from the parent. How much parent how much the parent is going to pay in semester 1, semester 2, semester 3.
Members of Parliament expressed doubts about the effectiveness of the new funding model, noting that many vulnerable students have either missed out on university education or dropped out due to high fees compared to the government's support.
Issues of giving fee structures 600,000, we don't want to see it in this particular thing. So we want you to come back indicating that the student or the family is paying this amount of money. The rest is upon you to link with the university and pay them. Show the parent what he's supposed to pay. If it is 16,000, let it be distributed per semester, 8,000, 4,000 and 2,000.
We will ask the universities then to write to the students and indicate clearly that this is the amount that the household is supposed to pay. The rest has already been is going to be supported by government.
The State Department of Higher Learning has now been instructed to provide exact fee structures per student to ensure transparency in the placement of funding levels.
Yes, maybe, Chair.
Meanwhile, the State Department of Higher Learning is urging the Exchequer to release 29 billion shillings to complete disbursements to universities and colleges for the 2023-2024 financial year. Harriet Chimea, K24.
Families seeking justice for over 60 people allegedly killed by police during Azimio demonstrations may face further delay. The Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, has cited challenges in completing the investigations, as Joel Chacha now reports.
Over a year since the Azimio anti-government protests rocked Kenya, the families of 60 protesters who lost their lives under disputed circumstances still await closure. Concerns loom large over the progress of investigations being conducted by the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, leaving the ghost of unresolved cases haunting the nation.
Some of them used live bullets to kill Kenyans. Have you done any investigation?
This forensic process, the burden still lies with DCI. And so we have to depend on DCI to give us answers to some of these forensic questions that we want. The forensic laboratory is domiciled at the headquarters of DCI.
Appearing before the Constitutional Implementation and Oversight Committee, IPOA now wants the forensic lab domiciled at the DCI headquarters be made an independent institution.
The report from the Justice Maraga Emeritus has actually proposed that becomes an independent laboratory to serve all the arms of government that will need to use it, including the coroner and others. So that is a challenge we also have with investigating injuries.
The Inspector General Japheth Koome is also said to frustrate efforts by IPOA to unearth the atrocities committed against Kenyans by the police during the protests.
You have also invited the IG to your commission, and they have not honored your invitation.
We have even requested to go and visit him, which he has refused.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So we are not the only ones in this basket.
Yeah. As long as you're serving under the command of the Inspector General and the Inspector, or you're a member of the service which includes the Inspector General, must honor the summons. If failure to, we are obligated to enforce the same section through a court process.
Meanwhile, IPOA has commended investigations following reports of a minor who died in a police station in Makueni County, where his mother was arrested.
IPOA is seized of the matter. We are already actively investigating this case. And so far, we have already met with the mother, Zipporah Mudeu. We've taken statements. We have already taken all the police records, including the duty roster. What is outstanding amongst the other few remaining is the postmortem, which is happening on Wednesday, which is tomorrow. And IPOA is seized, and IPOA will be present.
Joel Chacha, K24 TV, Nairobi.
19-year-old Ian Njoroge has been charged with assault, robbery with violence, causing grievous bodily harm and resisting arrest. The charges stem from a viral video showing Njoroge physically assaulting a traffic police officer on Committee Road in Kasarani. He is currently remanded at Industrial Area as the Director of Public Prosecutions is expected to file a formal application to deny him bond.
Ian Njoroge seems to have gotten into the bad books of the law, evidenced by his lawyer's intervention today to stop alleged manhandling of the accused by police officers.
Asked him to be in court, and he did not leave this court. The court is sitting. And you brought him yourself. And you don't do anything to it. This is like a democratic society. How does this young man? I now sit here with him. Thank you.
Defense lawyer led by Duncan Okach, while urging the court to release Njoroge on lenient bail, alleged policeman handled Njoroge during his arrest at his mother's house, causing him to faint twice.
The accused person before you is 19 years old. He was brought here by 21 armed police officers. The number of police officers who escorted him are more than his age.
Upon submission by Njoroge's lawyers, Senior Principal Magistrate Martha Nanzushi granted Njoroge release on a cash bill of 60,000 shillings for traffic offences of ferrying more passengers than recommended and disrupting traffic. The prosecution, however, argued that statements from officers who are witnesses had not yet been completed and asked for Njoroge to not be granted bail at the criminal court.
These police officers, Your Honor, if they had time to sit down, they would have produced an affidavit before you.
Magistrate Ben Mark Ekubi ordered that Njoroge be taken to Kenyatta National Hospital for treatment following reports of bruises on his body. He will be remanded at Industrial Area Prison, though his lawyers expressed concerns for his safety. The case will be mentioned in court on June 18th for pre-trial purposes.
He should be accompanied by a parent, and also at all times he should be given access to his counsel, so that we can curtail or stop any form of an injustice towards him or infringement of his right.
Ben Kerera, K24, Nairobi.
Housing PS Charles Hinga says homeowners in the affordable housing scheme risk losing their houses if they miss mortgage payments for 4 consecutive months. Hinga states that resales cannot exceed 4 million shillings and require a 30-day waiting period for approval by the Ministry of Lands.
We've actually been quite generous with the giving sufficient time, because the whole spirit of this program is to bequeath Kenyans the house. And we will go out of our way to ensure that, yes, when you have difficulties, we'll still give you sufficient time to be able to adjust before you can get to the foreclosure part. This unit is highly subsidized. You're not going to get a 9% mortgage in the market, or the person in the social housing will never get a 3%. So the ability to collect the levy is actually what enables us to be able to provide Kenyans, and with long term, 30 years to pay. There's no bank that will give you 30 years. But because this money that we're getting is patient, we look at it as patient money.
Controller of Budget Margaret Nyakango has faulted county governments for continued flouting of laid procedures and recommendations from her office meant to curb wastage of public funds. Nyakango, who addressed the Senate Liaison Committee meeting in Uasin Gishu County, also noted that poor planning and budgeting have resulted in huge pending bills among counties, with Nairobi County on the lead. Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi officially opened the 2-day retreat, underscoring the importance of collaboration between the executive and the legislative arm. Here's Timothy Simwa with the details.
County governments have continued to flout regulations on public funds expenditure and often ignore the recommendations from the Control of Budget Office. Addressing the Senate Liaison Committee in Uasin Gishu County, Control of Budget Margaret Nyakango pointed out what her office believes are schemes designed to steal funds and promote pilferage in counties.
Are forged documents being brought to support withdrawals. We have seen payments to incorrect beneficiaries, as well as failure to deduct withholding taxes in line with the law. We have seen wasteful expenditure, such as the DSA on huge staff delegations.
Nyakango further says poor planning and budgeting are to blame for the ever-ballooning pending bills among counties, with the current figure standing at 153 billion shillings. Nairobi County leads among counties with the highest pending bills.
Some of the emerging issues in the settlement of the pending bills have been the poor planning and budgeting. So here we are looking at the expenditure commitments based on unrealistic revenue estimates. And I can vouch that this is the case of Nairobi County. Every year, we have fallen short by a very large margin.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi, who officially opened the two-day retreat, says all ministries and county governments are required to form corruption prevention committees.
If we are going to deal with this vice on corruption, and the representatives of the governors are here, maybe one needs to figure out to what extent have those corruption prevention committees been set up in our counties, and to what extent are they functioning.
Thus far, Musalia says ministries and counties have either ignored to implement this policy and asked senators to put them to task on availing corruption reports. Musalia, who doubles up as the Foreign and Diaspora Affairs Cabinet Secretary, added that the ministry is currently formulating Kenya's foreign policy sessional paper that will be presented in both legislative houses. Timothy Simwa, K24 TV.
Let's go to Mombasa County now, where the county government is cracking down on the sale of mogoka. Askari, the county enforcement officers, have shut down the usual bustling mogoka market at Kongowea. 3 trucks carrying mogoka from Embu were stopped at Maria Kani and not allowed to enter the county. Meanwhile, Coast governors under Jumuiya ya Counties of Pwani and the Coast Parliamentary Group, led by MP Danson Mashako, are refusing to meet with Cabinet Secretary Mithika Linturi to discuss the mogoka issue. They are demanding a meeting with President William Ruto instead.
Sisi tuko upinzani, hatuwezi kwenda kwa president. Watu wetu tutawatetea vipi? Lishikeni moja kama serikali. Mheshimiwa Ruto, tunakwambia sisi wa Pwani, viongozi wa Pwani tumeamua kama mbaya na nilitokuambia kabisa, hatutaruhusu hizi malori zinaletwa huku. Hii 500 million watumie huko kwao, wafanye biashara yao. Sisi mtuachie madafu yetu na maembe yetu huku Pwani. Kama ni pesa, tuweke kwa mkorosho. Kama ni pesa, weka kwa mnazi.
Director wa health upande wa Embu aliwahi kuzungumzia kwamba swala hili limeleta saratani huko kwao zaidi. Hata mmoja akakimbia marathon kuhakikisha kwamba anachangisha pesa za watu wa kule Embu watibiwe ugonjwa wa saratani. Kwa hivyo ni kitu ambacho ni hatari na hatutokubali.
Following the recent loss of lives and property occasioned by the adverse effects of climate change, the government has reiterated its plan to prioritize building resilience with its development partners to avert further losses. The agreement was reached during the second Development Partnership Forum, chaired by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua at his residence in Karen. According to the DP, the government has put up a task force to ensure that there is a high absorption rate of funds offered to mitigate calamities. Several ministries were represented in the meeting, as well as local and international partners.
We committed to enhance the absorption of our externally funded projects and to work together to develop a framework to strengthen the resilience of our country. In preparation for this meeting, we have embarked on a collaborative effort to delve into the factors that moderate the impact of development assistance. Today, we have the opportunity for an open and honest dialogue on what each party needs to do better to increase absorption rates and, most importantly, demonstrate results and impact in the lives of Kenyans.
The Public Finance Management Act doesn't work for the scale at which some of us are working, and I know that that's true of some of the bilaterals. Let me hasten. Lengthy delays in processing invoices, disbursements, or related to taxation and exemptions. I think there's a lot of work that we can do here.
Ongoing projects are worth 2.4 trillion and in terms of loans and 245 billion in terms of grants. So the total amount is 2.67 trillion. But you can see we have only disbursed 731 billion. A whole 1.93739 or about 1.94 trillion is yet to be disbursed. So we have a disbursement rate of 30%. That's quite low. And we have isolated also an important component of these projects, which are the stalled projects.
Let's go break on New Dawn. When we come back, we'll take a look at us making headlines on the dailies in a bit more detail. Also, let us know where you're watching us from this morning. Speak to us at K24 TV on X. The hashtag is New Dawn. Do stay with us.